الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على سيدنا نبينا خاتم المرسلين أبو القاسم محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد أما بعد قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم إن الحسين مصباح الهدى والسفينة النجاة اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قال الله عز وجل إن الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات سيجعل لهم الرحمن ودا. My dear friends, you're watching the Ashura program on Vilaya TV, and I have the honor to talk to you today on Ashura Day, share some of my thoughts with all of you. And it's it's a day of grief for all of us. It's a day that we do not even wish each other and say Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Our hearts are filled with grief. Our hearts are heavy. Our hearts are there in Karbala today. Karbala on the day of Ashura, that land of Karbala shook as if the earth was revolting against shedding the blood of innocent people. The sky cried tears of blood and turned red. That day of Ashura, when Imam Hussain and his small band of companions, his friends, his family, gave up everything for the sake of Allah, for the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to safeguard Islam, so that today we enjoy the Islam. We worship Allah the way we do because of the sacrifices of Imam Hussain and his companions. We give zakat, we do homes. We struggle on the path of righteousness, the straight path, all because of Imam Hussain. We do Amar bil Maruf and Nahi anil Munkar, all because of Imam Hussain, all of his sacrifice. That day of Ashura in that land of Karbala. And today is the day of remembrance of this great event of Karbala. But inshallah, we will talk about the Masahib of Imam Hussain. And the discussions for the 10 days of Muharram has been on this ayat of the Holy Quran. This beautiful ayat of Surah Maryam, this again brings us that message of love and of peace, which is all about Islam. Islam is all about love and peace. This ayat in the Holy Quran of Surah Maryam, verse number 96, where Allah says, Inna lazina amanu wa amilu salihati sayaj'alu lahumur rahmanu udda. Allah is telling us that for the good deeds and the iman in our hearts, He is going to reward us with putting love in our hearts. Love for each other, love for our relatives, love for our friends, love for humanity as a whole. And finally, the source of all love is the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who likes to call himself Ar-Rahman. Ar-Rahman is the word we recite all the time. It's the rahmat of Allah. His extreme mercy, his extreme kindness, extreme generosity, extreme love for all of us. And it doesn't matter what faith we belong to. Allah's love engulfs all of humanity, irrespective of whether somebody even believes in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or not. And the same is true for the love that Imam Hussain has for the whole humanity. This love engulfs all of us, fills our hearts with tranquility and peace. And it is because of this love that Imam Hussain has for us and we have for Imam Hussain. So love is something that transforms us. Love is something that perfects us. Love is something that brings out abilities within us we did not even know we possessed. And at the height of this love, when we are connected to the divine, when we fall in love with those whom Allah has purified himself, when Allah says in the Holy Quran, O Ahl Bayt, I have purified you with a thorough purification. When that love happens, then miracles can happen. And that's what we see in the world today. The miracle of the Azadari of Imam Hussain, that it is still alive in our hearts today, that even after so many years have passed away, we still remember Imam Hussain. We remember him and love him and hold him and his family dearer to us than anything in the world. But love has that power of transformation. And when we talk about transformation, the best example is how Hazrat Hur, came to the side of Imam Hussain, how he was attracted towards love. So we'll start with that at a personal level, how a person can be transformed because of love. And the best example, because we are thinking about Karbala today, our hearts are there with Imam Hussain. The best example is Hazrat Hur, that he sees the generosity and the kindness and love of Imam Hussain. That when he is there with his army, he belongs to the army of Yazid. And we know it is Yazid who's opposing Imam Hussain, Yazid who stands for Yazidiyat, which is evil in this world, and Hussain who stands for Hussainiyat, which is love and peace and generosity and kindness and mercy. You can take all of those noble qualities, and that is Hussainiyat. So this is the battle that's going on in Karbala. And Hazrat Hur, when he first encounters Imam Hussain, he is an enemy. He is coming from the side of Yazid, and he sees the generosity and kindness of Imam Hussain, that his soldiers, Hur and his soldiers, are so very thirsty that if they did not get water at that time, they would have perished. And Imam Hussain sees that all of them, even though they are his enemies, all of them are going to die of thirst. He requests his camp open up all the water containers. And water, which is like gold in the desert, it's like gold. If there is no water, then there is no life. And so all those containers of waters are opened up. The soldiers are given water and to quench their thirst. And the soldiers also remember how kind Imam Hussain and his companions were, that even they prevented the gushing of water from the containers to a level that all of them could drink comfortably. They even took care of that. The horses were given water as well. So the generosity of our Imam is what makes Hur today. In the morning, Hur has changed camps. He comes from the camp of Yazid and he comes towards the camp of Imam Hussain because he remembers that love of Imam Hussain, the love that Imam Hussain has, no matter who they are, whether they are enemies or they are friends. That love has that attraction to change the destiny of somebody like Hur, because Hur was going towards hell and then he comes towards heaven just with that power, that attraction that love has. And then we see how Islam changed the whole society. Today, there are social people that look at socioeconomic powers across the world, people that study political situation. They are reformists that look at societies as a whole. They are moralists that want to bring about moral values in the society. And they are amazed at how in 23 years, love had that power. The Islam had that power because Islam stands for love and peace. Islam had that power to change a society that was so backward. Allah chose a society that was so backward to bring Islam. Islam was first born in that society. And then it spread all across the world. And today, the world is filled with peace and love because of Islam. But people are amazed in 23 years. How was it possible for our prophet to accomplish something that takes hundreds and hundreds of years to change a society, especially a society that was so backward, a society that would just be involved in fighting wars with each other? This is what they did 100% of the time. They would be thinking about strategies to fight wars within nations, war within tribes that had no logic or reason. One example that is given in history is this fight between the tribe of Oz and the tribe of Khazraj. There was a fight going on, a very bloody fight, and the fight was over a really small matter. There was a camel that belonged to an old woman who trespassed in the property of the next tribe, and it broke some eggs. And so the person of that property, that tribe, he went and killed that camel. And so the old woman complained to his tribe. She complained about it. And then the two tribes started fighting, a fight that lasted for more than 20 years. And this was a fight that involved killing people. So you can imagine the society that does that, a society that thinks kindness and mercy and generosity and patience and forgiveness is signs of weakness. They thought that was a sign of a weakness. And they didn't want to do that. They didn't want to forgive anyone because they thought that's going to show that we are so weak. A society that buried their infant children, their infant girls, because they thought this was an honor. Bibi Fatima Zahra Salamullahi alaiha, in her famous khutbah of Fadak, she talks about where they were, what level they were at before her father, the Prophet of Islam, brought about Islam, that they would drink water from ditches near the road. They would be eating the flesh of dead animals. This is who they were. But what they had that was perfect was their language, Quranic, Arabic. I mean, the Arabic, which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chooses to bring us Quran in, because that was the most comprehensive, that is the most beautiful language. So the perfection there was the perfection of Arabic. They had perfected that language to an extent that they could even talk in poetry. And this is what they were proud of. They're very proud of their language as well. So the prophet brought about this big change, such a change that it changed that society in 23 years. They went from being somebody who would be in love with war to somebody who were peace loving. And it brought about such a change because there was not only love, but knowledge that flowed out of the house of the Prophet, the Holy Ahl Bayt. Because Allah, when He tells us, Inna lazina amanu amalu salihati sayajalu lahum rahmanu udda, the love He's talking about is love for the holy ones, the Holy Ahl Bayt, that He has put in our hearts. So the house of the Holy Ahl Bayt overflowed with love, love for everyone and with knowledge, because the Prophet says, Ana Madinatul Ilm wa Aliyun Babuha, that I am the city of knowledge and Ali is its gate. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So knowledge flowed out of that house, knowledge that filled that whole Islamic world. And we see that our Imams, our fifth Imam and our sixth Imam, were given that opportunity to open up universities where there were so many subjects that were being taught, from algebra to trigonometry to mathematics to physics to chemistry, philosophy. There were so many subjects that were being taught. And then pretty soon that light of knowledge overflowed from that land of Arabia to other countries. We see that there were textbooks in Arabic that were translated to Greek and Latin, and people in Europe were using those books. For example, we know famous scientists like Avicenna, who wrote the Canons of Medicine, that was translated and used even pretty in the pretty modern days. And then we have the father of trigonometry, and then we have the father of trigonometry is Al-Tusi. The father of physics, modern physics, is Al-Haytham. So we have all of these scholars, and then we know Jabir ibn Hayyan, who was the student of our sixth Imam. All of these philosophers and scientists were born out of this love and peace and knowledge that flowed from the house of the Prophet, from the Holy Ahl Bayt. The whole world was filled with this, filled with this knowledge. And the whole world enjoyed the literature and all of those scientific discoveries that were coming from this tiny place that only a while back was filled with people that were so very ignorant, so very steeped in superstitions. And so that happened, and we know the knowledge of our Mawla. I want to talk about three things that shows us the knowledge of our Mawla at the scientific level. And our Mawla, we have so many beautiful narrations of how our Mawla solved problems. The first one I'm going to mention is a man who came up to our Mawla Ali, and he said, "Oh Mawla, I did a mannat that if something became true, if something, my prayer was answered, I would give grain the weight of an elephant." I just said it at the spur of the moment, not realizing how I would weigh an elephant to figure out how much grain to give away in charity. And Amala solves that problem. The house where the Prophet says, Ana Madinatul Ilm Waliyun Babuha, the gateway, the doorway to knowledge, is going to solve this problem. And this is way back so many years ago, 13 more than 13 1400 years ago that this has happened. And Amala says, this man was very rich, so Amala says, put that elephant in a boat and put that in the water and see the level of water the boat sinks to. Then do the same for the grain. So very simple solution to the problem based on the weight and how far it's going to dip into the water. Amazing. And then the other one that I want to talk about is this lady. This is also a really famous narration where Armola is ready to mount a horse because he's leaving somewhere. One of his feet is in that stirrup, and he's about to put his other foot over the horse when this lady comes up and she says that, "Oh Mola, I have a question. I have been cheated." And of course, when Amala hears anything to do with justice, he has to solve it right away. He says, "What injustice has been done to you? Tell me." And she says, "My brother died, leaving behind 600 dinar, and I was only given 10 dinar. And how is it possible that I get only 10 dinar?" And Amala, at the spur of the moment, he has already calculated. He says, "It must be that your brother had children. He has a wife, he has a mother, and you have 12 brothers." She says, "Mala, how do you know all of this? Do you know my family?" And he says, "No, it's a simple calculation because if you take two-thirds of that, 400 dinars belong to the children. One-eighth of it belongs to his wife, that's 75 dinar. One-sixth of it belongs to his mother, that's 100 dinar. And you have 12 brothers, so they get 24 dinar each, and then total of 24 dinar for the 12 brothers, and you get um, the 10 dinar that was given to you. So it's very just. It was just amazing how Amala solved that problem in like while he's like mounting on the horse. So this was the knowledge that flowed out of that house, and this is the knowledge that fills the world today. But Islam, the beauty of Islam is that love, that message of love, because our Prophet is called Rahmatul lil Alameen, a mercy, a source of mercy, blessing, love, kindness, generosity to the whole world, not only this world, but the next. Not only just humans, but everything that Allah has created. He's a mercy to everything. And that this message, that's such an important message. So many sacrifices that were made to save this message in the days of the Prophet. So many sacrifices that went to it. This beautiful message of Islam was going to be removed from this earth, so that today we would not have been able to do our namazes right. We would not have been able to do our worship to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Even that concept of Allah being so full of mercy and kindness and generosity and love, that message, we would not get it. For just for the sake of Imam Hussain, we have all of this today. And that is because of his sacrifice on that land of Karbala on the day of Ashura. He stood up against Yazid to save Islam because Yazid was changing the face of Islam, showing the world that Islam is not about peace and love. Islam is about hatred. This is what he was showing. Islam is, he would do evil deeds and claim himself to be the leader of Muslims. And the Muslims, of course, people follow their leaders. So people would have followed that line of evil. And today, this world would be filled with evil. And just what Imam Hussain did on that day of Ashura is what saved Islam. Imam Hussain, his companions, and his friends. So Maula is the one who saved Islam from being destroyed, for the face of Islam from being changed. And today we remember him. But where do we start? How do we start with describing what happened on the day of Ashura in Karbala? Who has the words to describe the Shahadat of Imam Hussain? Who has the words to describe the Shahadat of his companions, his friends who went before him, before the family went to the battlefield? His companions, and his friends laid down their lives. Their stories are so beautiful, so full of love, that what they wanted to show is the love and loyalty for Imam Hussain, love and loyalty for the Prophet, and love and loyalty to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Each one of them laid down their lives. And then came the time for the family to go to the battlefield. Ono Muhammad laid down their lives. Then it was Qasim. His body was cut to pieces. Then it was Hazrat Abbas. He gave up his arms. Hazrat Abbas, who was the most courageous warrior, the commander in chief of Imam Hussein's army, he wanted to fight so badly to go to that battlefield. But his desire was never fulfilled because he went to get water for the children who were dying of thirst, children who had been thirsty and hungry for 3 days. The 7th of Muharram is when there was no water in the camp of Imam Hussein. For 3 days, there's been hunger and thirst in that camp of Imam Hussein. And today, the cries of children fills up. The whole place is filled up with the cries of children calling, Alatash, 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 oh thirst, oh thirst, oh thirst. And Hazrat Abbas wants to get water, and when he goes there, that water bag is riddled with arrows, water flows out, and so does the hope of Hazrat Abbas. His arms are cut, and he lies now by Nahr Furat, that stream of river that were occupied by Yazidi forces, not allowing water to the camp of Imam Hussein. And then it's Ali Akbar, who looked just like the Prophet. And Imam Hussein thought, if the soldiers saw my Ali Akbar, saw that this is the Prophet himself, they would know which house this Hussein belongs to. Why are they killing me for no reason? They would realize that because our Mawla wanted forgiveness for everyone. He wanted those soldiers to have that opportunity to change and come to his side to fight with the good and to fight against evil. But when Ali Akbar goes to the battlefield, he dies of an arrow in his chest. They kill him as well. And then Imam Hussein, when he goes back to the camp, he has blood of Ali Akbar on his shirt. And he wants to give one last opportunity to the soldiers. So he goes back to the battlefield and he calls out, Hal min Nasirin Yansurna, is there anybody to help me? And there's no cries coming from the side of Yazid's soldiers. They are actually making fun of Imam Hussein. Imam Hussein goes back, and as he's walking back towards the camp, he hears the cries of agony coming from the camp saying, Oh Hussein, Ali Asghar is going to give up his life. He's dying of thirst in his cradle. This is the 6-month baby of our Maula Hussein. And when Maula goes to the cradle, he picks up Ali Asghar in his arms and he says, Ali Asghar, let's go ask for some water. I cannot bear to see you in this condition. Surely the soldiers of Yazid have some mercy in their heart, some rahmat in their heart, that they are going to give you a few drops of water. The mother steps forward, Bab steps forward, and she says, Mola, let me change his shirt, just like any other mother would do. She changes the shirt of Ali Asghar. Ali Asghar is almost lifeless, barely able to open his eyes, barely able to open his mouth. It's written that he would open and close his mouth just like a fish out of water does. He was dying of thirst. Imam Hussein carries Ali Asghar to the place where the soldiers are. He's wrapped him in a bundle because of the heat of the sun. He wants to prevent Ali Asghar from the rays of the sun. And people think, what has Hussein brought with him to ask now? Is he bringing the Quran? And when he unravels that piece of cloth, they see the beautiful face of Ali Asghar. Ali Asghar, the infant child dying in the arms of his father from lack of water. Some soldiers start crying, and Umar ibn Saad commands, Hormala, Hormala, give them that answer, an answer to that question Hussein has for water. Give that answer in the form of an arrow. And that arrow flies and comes towards that baby. An arrow that is a 3-pronged arrow, too big for the tiny throat of Ali Asghar. It pierces his throat and lodges itself in the arm of Imam Hussein. Imam Hussein removes that arrow and then wraps up his baby again, close to his heart. He holds him and he walks back. I shared this before, but last time I went to Karbala, we go to Karbala every year for Arba'in. Last time I went, they opened up the place, the Maqam Ali Asghar, where Ali Asghar was shot with that arrow. There's some malls that were built now. So before we could not make out where the Maqam Ali Asghar is with respect to the shrine of Imam Hussain and with respect to the Khemega, which is behind the shrine of Imam Hussain. But this year, because they opened up the roads and they constructed some malls, it's a pretty clear road to where Ali Asghar, Maqam Ali Asghar is. And as I visited the Maqam and stepped out on the main road, I could see the shrine in the distance. And I know that behind the shrine is the Khemega. And I realized for the first time that my Mawla, that Hussein had to walk such a big distance in that heat, that intense heat of that day in the afternoon with Ali Asghar in his arms, a baby that is already dying of thirst. He had to walk such a big distance to ask for water, and he was given none except for that arrow that pierced the baby's throat. And now he has to walk all the way back to Khimega, where the mother is waiting anxiously for her child, and Bibi Sakina is waiting for her brother, and all the ladies are waiting for Aliyasqa to come back. And Imam Hussain, it is written in narrations, and that's the amal we do today, is walk back and forth 7 times. Our Mawla walked back and forth 7 times, saying, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi rajoon, rizan bi khazai wa tasliman li amri. Surely from Allah we come, and to His is our return. He kept saying this 7 times because he was thinking, how am I going to take this child to his mother? Surely the mother would not be able to see this child in this condition and she would die. And he went back and forth 7 times before he went to the back of the Khemega. And he dug a shallow grave with his sword. And there he lay Ali Asghar to rest in that burning sand of Karbala. And when he had done that, he remembered us. He said, oh my Shias, how I missed you. How I missed you when I called out, Hal min Nasirin Yansurna. How I missed you when I carried my baby back. And when I buried my baby, how I missed you. Our hearts are with you, Imam said. Our hearts are there with you. And our souls were not joined to our bodies when you called out, Hal min Nasirin Yansurna. Here we are today, your helpers. Imam Hussain, after he buried Ali Asghar, he went back to the camp. And after he went back to the camp, he uh, he had the blood of Ali Asghar on his shirt, and Bibi Sakina could see that yes, her father had that blood on his shirt, and she knew what had happened to baby Ali Asghar, and so did Umair Bab. And Umair Bab just said one statement: "Oh Mawla, he was so young. How could they kill somebody who's so young?" And then Imam Hussain asked for Bibi Zainab, and he said, Zainab, come here, Zainab. Bring that shirt that my mother had stitched for me. Because Bibi Fatima had stitched a shirt specially for Imam Hussain to wear on the day of Ashura. Bibi Zainab brought him that shirt and said, my dearest, my mother had also made a wish. She had said that, Zainab, that day of Ashura, make sure that you kiss Hussein on his neck. And she does that. And then Imam Hussein steps out into the battlefield, saying goodbye to everybody, bidding farewell to everyone. And there is nobody there to help Imam Hussein on his horse, except except for Bibi Zainab. She comes forward and she says, I will help you mount the horse, Hussein. हुसैन जब के चले बाद करबला रन को कोई न था कि जो थामे रखाब कौस्तौसन को सकीना थाम रही थी अबा के दामन को हुसैन चुप के खड़े थे झुकाए गर्दन को न आस रहा था कोई शाह करबलाई को फखद बहन ने किया था सवार भाई को Imam Hussein mounted his horse and he started going towards the battlefield. It is written in narrations that the horse moved a little distance and then the horse stopped. It would not move. And Imam Hussein said, O Zuljana, my horse, You have brought bodies back from the battlefield all the day, the whole day. It was almost the time of Zuhar, late Zuhar now, and I know that you have done this the whole day. Just one last trouble I want to give you, Zuljana. Take me to the battlefield. And Zuljana pointed with his nose towards the ground, and Imam Hussein saw that baby Sakina was there, his 4-year-old daughter, clinging to the legs of Zuljana. Imam Hussein dismounted from his horse and he sat down with Sakina in his lap, and he said, Sakina, Sakina, what are you doing out here? Sakina, you need to be inside the tent. You need to be inside the khimiga. What are you doing out here, my child? And Sakina said, my dearest father, whoever goes to the battlefield does not come back. I know that you're not going to come back. I want to lie down. I want to lie on your chest. One last time, dearest father, because Sakina would find peace and consolation. She would listen to the heartbeat of Imam Hussein, and that's how she would fall asleep. Our Mawla lay down on that sand of Karbala, and Sakina lay down on his chest. He comforted her, and after a while, he said, Sakina, my child, go back. Go back, and I promise you, Sakina, you're going to see me very soon. Sakina went back to the camp, and Imam Hussein mounted his horse again, went to the battlefield, and he fought so very bravely. It's written in narrations that the soldiers were amazed at the strength of Imam Hussein. They were amazed that somebody who has lost all his family, his friends, all his loved ones, all his near and dear ones, can fight so bravely in the battlefield. The soldiers were running away in all directions, and Imam Hussein fought relentlessly. He looked towards Nehre Furat, where Hazrat Abbas was lying in the sand, and he said, Oh Abbas, you had that desire to fight. Look, your brother is fighting now. Look at how bravely I'm fighting these soldiers. He looked towards where Ali Akbar was and Qasim and Anu Muhammad, and he said, look, my dear ones, how your father, your uncle is fighting this battle. He looked towards where his followers, his his companions were lying on the sands of Karbala. And he said, Look how bravely I'm fighting this battle. Imam Hussein went on fighting. And towards the time of Asr, he was getting very weak from loss of blood, 3 days of thirst and hunger. He was surrounded by all sides by the soldiers who were raining stones and rocks. Anything they had in their hands was coming raining down on Imam Hussein. Swords and arrows fell on him. He was wounded so much, so many arrows lodged in his body, that our 12th Imam says that there was not an inch of skin on his body that was not covered with an arrow. Imam Hussein started swaying on that horse, and Zuljana knew that this is the time that he has to take his master back to the Khatlaga, where the Nashib, that small depression in earth, where the mother of Imam Hussein is waiting for him with her arms outstretched. ए मेरे हुसैन मेरी गोद में आजा मेरे बच्चे मेरी आगोश में आजा. And there's a cry that comes from the heavens. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saying, Ya ayyataha nafsul mutma'inna irja'i ila rabbiki raziyatan marziya fadkhuli fi ibadi wadkhuli jannati. O soul that is tranquil, come to your Lord. You are well pleased with your Lord, and your Lord is well pleased with you. Enter paradise. The call that is heard from the heavens. Imam Hussein falls from his horse onto the sand, that depression in earth where Zuljana, his horse, has brought him. But his arrow is raised off the ground because it is riding on arrows. His body is raised from the ground because it's riding on arrows. Arrows that raise his body above the ground. He does the last sajda because he wants to do his namaz, the namaz-e asr. And so he makes a mound from the earth of Karbala. He puts his head there and he's thanking Allah, thanking Allah for that honor that he is able to sacrifice everything he had, everything for the sake of and love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is asking for forgiveness. Forgiveness for the people around him. See the love and mercy of our Mawla Hussein. He's saying, oh Allah, forgive them because they know not what they are doing to me. And he's asking for forgiveness for the whole of humanity. And then the earth of Karbala shook, and the sky started raining raindrops of blood. The wind started moving in all directions, scattering the sand of Karbala everywhere, so that the whole sky filled up with that color red. A red haze came over the land of Karbala. A fourth Imam who was very sick, could barely he could barely move, he could barely lift himself up. When he heard the cries from the sky, and he saw that the earth is moving in revolt for the shedding of innocent blood, and he saw the winds rising, he took help of his walking stick, his asa, and slowly he came out from the tent, only to see a sight that no son should see that sight ever. And that was the head of Imam Hussein raised on a lance. A cry came from the heart of our fourth Imam. Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah. Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah. Assalamu alayka wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. He saw he saw his aunt Bibi Zainab standing in a distance, looking at what was happening. Bibi Zainab Kubra, Ummul Masai Bibi Zainab. We have to give Pursa today to Bibi Zainab, to Bibi Sayyida, to the Prophet of Islam, to all our Imams, especially to our 12th Imam. We have to give our condolences to all of them and tell them that today, our Imams, we remember Imam Hussein. We remember Imam Hussein and Karbala. Our hearts are there. Our hearts are grieved, filled with tears. And we have to make that promise to Imam Hussein. Oh, Hussein, you were the one who made sure that Islam is safeguarded. You were the one who made sure that this message of love and peace flows throughout the world. That people, when they look at Islam, they don't think of it as a religion of terrorists. It's a religion of people who only want love and peace. Let us be the ones, the channels that Allah wants us to be, to spread this rahmat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the rahmat of Rahmatul Alameen, the rahmat of Imam Mazloom. Spread this throughout the world. Let us be the channels that spread this love and mercy and spread the message of Imam Hussein so that everybody can join under this banner of love and peace and mercy. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Allah lanatullahi ala khamiz zalimeen. With that, I ask to leave. Khuda Hafiz.